So, continuing our series on Rebbe Nachman of Breslov's Outpouring of the Soul. Chapter 5, Blazing a New Trail. There is another advantage in expressing one's own thoughts before God in one's meditation. One can meditate by reciting supplications and prayers that have already been composed. However, all the forces that destroy one's meditative state and denounce it lie along the path of such prayers. This is because these forces are well aware of such paths. It is very much like a well-known public road. Since bandits and murderers are aware of this road, they can lurk alongside it, waiting for the unwary. But if one blazes a new trail, or travels one that is not yet known, then no unfriendly elements can lurk on the wayside. Similarly, when a person expresses his own thoughts to God, he is taking a new path and composing a new prayer. Therefore, he is not nearly as likely to encounter negative forces. Nevertheless, one must also make other prayers and supplications part of one's meditations. Basically what he's saying is that if you are going by daylight into any kind of religious institution and reciting chants or prayers or following an established ritual, that on either side of you are bandits who are intent on robbing you of the spiritual content of that experience. Bandits and murderers who are intent on depriving you of the spiritual experience that you're setting out to cultivate. Now, of course, these are not real bandits and real murderers. These are forces that are brought to bear when we try to have collectively an experience which of its own nature is fundamentally solitary and private. We try to have an experience collectively and to generate it collectively, an experience that of its nature wells up within us and seizes us from within, like a hand reached inside of a glove. The difference is the person who goes and picks up a glove and carries it around in their hand, as opposed to the person who carries a glove by putting their hand within it. That's an analogy that you could use to understand the difference. Glove doesn't really fulfill its function unless your hand is inside of it. It's the same with prayer. Unless you occupy that solitary space within prayer and meditation, then it's like carrying around a glove in your hand. It's a bother. It weighs you down, keeps you from doing other things you need to do, and accomplishes nothing. It is not fulfilling its purpose. Now, as Rebbe Nachman himself says, this doesn't mean that we don't gather together collectively, like, for instance, we are today. It doesn't mean that we don't recite established prayers. It does mean that we mustn't only do these things. I think we all know what that looks like when you only experience collective meditation or collective prayer or collective worship. It looks like going to synagogue, on the Sabbath, or to church on Sunday, or to the Zen monastery down the road here on a Sunday morning to practice. It's fine. It's good. There's nothing wrong with it. But you won't ultimately get what you want unless you put the hand inside of the glove. In the same way, we have to cultivate our own relationship to practice and to meditation. Rebbe Nachman says we do this by blazing our own trail, by composing our own prayers. Rebbe Nachman taught a method that involved spending 1 hour a day speaking out loud in solitude to God. He recommended rising in the middle of the night to do this. And of course, those of us who practice green meditation strive at least to spend some time in darkness in this kind of open-hearted, themeless kind of meditation every day. Some of us wake easily in the night to do this. Some of us wake naturally on our own as we get older doing this sort of prayer. Some of us set an alarm clock to wake up. Some of us don't do it at that time at all, but do it at dusk or in the evening or during the day as well. It doesn't matter. Once you've caught the feel for this kind of meditation, you can do it anywhere. You can do it in front of an open book. Rebbe Nachman recommends doing just this. Open a book in front of you. People will think you're reading, right? Or he says you can pull your tallis down. That's a Jewish prayer shawl. Pull it down over your head. You pull your hat down. You can appear to be napping. You can do any number of things during the day to find a little privacy and solitude for yourself. The Buddha accomplished this by simply lowering his eyelids, half open, half closed, and creating that twilight space for solitude and contemplation. Now, it's hard to understand how this might manifest itself in, say, a tradition like Zen Buddhism, where, yes, of course you're doing chanting, but mostly you're meditating silently, following the breath in and out, or counting the breath from 1 to 10, or perhaps reciting a koan, okay, a Zen paradox, some people call them, something like mu, or the sound of one hand, perhaps, meditating deeply on such a thing. So the question becomes, how does that become themeless? And the answer is really the same, whatever tradition we're involved in, and that is, it must be relational. It must be conversational. We cannot isolate and we cannot remain alone in our practice, or it is not real. We might ask ourselves, what does that mean in the context of solitary prayer? How do you be in a conversation? How do you relate? How do you remain open if you're in solitude? Rebbe Nachman says something very curious. He says that when you follow the road, there will be bandits there to seize your enthusiasm, to seize your individual experience, to take it away from you, to deprive you of it. Whereas if you follow that footpath that's sort of lonely, suddenly you will find yourself in relationship to everything and everyone and all that is. It's a peculiar thing. He recommends, of course, going out at night into an open field under the stars and with the grasses. He says that the grasses and the trees and the flowers will strengthen your meditation and give power to your words. What he means is that by opening ourselves to all that is in solitary meditation, and in fact we open our hearts in a way that is very difficult in the presence of too many other people. And so he suggests that we find this solitary moment, this solitary period of time.